Do you think there's any chance that Linda and Richard were actually their real names and Diane is the only one who chose to return?
I mean, I do. I think that gets back to that Mulholland Drive question of like, what's the underlying reality that like something else is the mythologization or the dream of? And for me, there's always that dichotomy where it's like something feels more real. Now, again, that's why we need the fire walk with me for Cooper so we can answer that question more properly.
I do like the idea that maybe Diane makes a certain decision at a certain point,
Mhm.
to say, like, I'm out of here. Who hung the Kafka picture in the Hastings household?
I could see Hastings reading Kafka and appreciating it. Like he seems like he's very much that guy who's like complete. He's such an odd, interesting character. He almost doesn't make sense as a character. Like his extremes are so extreme. This question calls to mind something I've always kind of thought about Hastings and that whole storyline. I don't know if this is true or not. I kind of think Lynch and Frost wrote the first episode out without knowing where it would go, just like they wrote the pilot of Twin Peaks. Even though in this case they had plenty of time to write everything ahead of time. I think they came up with who and what he was after they came up with the idea that he was this guy arrested with his fingerprints all over the room with a woman that he claimed not to know. And then they figured out afterwards what actually happened. That's
Yeah,
my
I like it.
so I think
That's
he's
good.
almost more Kafka-esque in that first episode than he is later.
I know that Bob has the fury of his own momentum, but does Bob also have free will?
Mm, God, that's Bob, and particularly the way that the Venn diagram of Bob overlaps with Leland. It's sort of like what I was talking about with Diane and Cooper, right? Where it's like, where does sort of, if somebody is like a piece of somebody else, where does that end? To what extent is Bob a universal figure? To what extent is he particularly Leland? I mean, I think they pretty officially made him a more universal figure, but if people have free will, I suppose Bob does too, maybe.